Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, WIZE, and I have a special guest on today. He's a first-time author with 30 years as an information technology manager with Wells Fargo's. Welcome to the show, William Allen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So I see that you're from Tampa.
Well, I'm living here now. I've lived in a couple places in the last 20, 30 years, but this is where I'm at right now. Yeah, I'm in a little town called Lutz. You know where that is?
Yes, I lived in Tampa 8 years. I lived all the way by MacDill Air Force Base.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I know where Lutz is. Yes.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, beautiful day today.
I can imagine. Yeah, Tampa has some beautiful weather.
Yeah, sure does.
I'll actually be heading down to Florida in May. There's this big convention going to be happening in Orlando for podcasters called Podfest, and it'll be my first time. Yes, it'll be my first time attending the event, and so I'm excited. I get to network with other fellow podcasters. There are going to be some guest speakers there, so it's great because I feel like this is going to help me as a podcaster, being able to network with all these people, and who knows what might come from it.
Absolutely. You know, whenever you're networking with people, you're going to get something one way or the other, and a lot of times you get stuff you don't even expect you're going to get. So it's usually a good thing.
Yeah. So you're a first-time author. How did that come about?
Well, you know what? As you were mentioning, I was an information technology manager, and I did that for 30 years or so. But I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, so I've always had a strong interest in psychology. And one of the things that I discovered in the last 20 years or so was that I had a personality trait called sensory processing sensitivity, or a lot of people call it high sensitivity. And, you know, as a guy, it wasn't exactly one of those kind of things that I thought that I wanted to attach to myself, is that I was a sensitive man. But I needed to spend some more time learning about it. And what happened is I started writing a blog, about 5, 6 years ago. And as I was writing the blog, I got to know more about this particular personality trait. And I was writing about questions that as a guy, I wanted to know, right? How does it affect me? What is the quality of this trait anyway? And what's the good things about it? What's the bad things about it? So forth. And I wrote this blog for a couple of years, and I realized after a couple of years, 2 years ago, in fact, 3 years maybe, I had enough material to write a book, and really there weren't a whole lot of books out there written specifically for men who have this personality trait. So I wrote the book, and then as I was writing, I also wrote the second book. So I have 2 books out right now about the trait, but that's how I kind of got into doing that. And I have retired since, all this from information technology, and I'm just really focusing my attention on talking about the trait, going out and talking to people and that kind of thing, and doing podcasts. So, and it's been a blast. I really enjoy doing it.
Oh no, podcasting is fun, especially when you get to speak to certain guests, and it's just the conversation. And when you can provide positive content and positive conversation, I feel like that's a win-win for everyone.
It certainly is. Yeah.
It's so much negative content out there and so much stupidness out there that my main focus is to just bring positive content and have people come on and share their stories so that people can realize, hey, you're not there's other people with stories out there, and they're willing to share it, and they're willing to share their experiences. And so me being able to provide this has been like it says in my intro, it's me on my road to self-discovery. I'm still learning about myself every day.
Yeah. Well, this is, and I appreciate all the podcasters out there, and I appreciate you for doing this, because you're absolutely right. We need to focus more on some positivity as opposed to all the negative stuff we tend to see in the news and so forth. And so it's really a great thing that you're doing here. And I'm glad to be on your show.
So how does someone find out if they have that trait?
Okay. There is a test that you can take. It's a real easy test to do it. It's on Dr. Elaine Aron is the one who is the person who discovered the trait, even though it's been around since human beings have been around. And she has a website called hsperson.com. And you can go there. It's a real quick test, 27 questions. You can grade it right then on the spot, and you'll at least get some idea. It kind of gets you in the ballpark to help you determine if you have this personality trait. And the thing about the personality trait is, and if you don't mind, I'd like to do a real quick definition of it so we kind of have something to
Okay.
base our conversation on. High sensitivity is a personality trait that people inherit. It's normal. There's about 20% of the human population that has this trait, and that's like 1.5 billion people. So it's not a small number. It's not the majority, but it's not a small number either by just sheer numbers alone. And there are 4 main qualities that go with this personality trait. And she uses this acronym, DOES, does, as the way to remember what those trait attributes are. So let me go through them real quick. D stands for depth of processing. This is the part of highly sensitive people are very deep thinkers. They think very deeply about things, and they process information at a very deep dive level. So when you are talking or working with a highly sensitive person, very often they're going to be lost in thought a lot of times, because that's what they do. We're deep thinkers, right? That's a good thing, in that it allows you to process a lot of information at a level that a lot of people just don't do. So that's one of the characteristics. And if your subscribers or listeners are anywhere along the way, if they identify with this, I would suggest going and taking the test. The second letter is O. It stands for overstimulation or overwhelm. Highly sensitive people get so much data coming in and so much processing that they do that it can be overwhelming sometimes, and you have to kind of take some downtime, get out in nature, meditate, get away, whatever, in order to recuperate, so to speak, from all the information that you're dealing with. So a lot of times this pressure and everything else from getting this data causes highly sensitive people to be overstimulated. So that's what the O stands for. The E stands for 2 things. It stands for emotional reactivity. Highly sensitive people are very emotional people. That's probably the one thing that I think when you say the word sensitive, that's what people think of first of all, is they're just very emotional people. But it's because we process emotions at a very deep level. So that's something that we do naturally. It's not it's not some kind of a disorder or problem. It's just the way we process information. And the other half of that E is empathy, because highly sensitive people are very empathetic. Very often you'll find them in helping professions, or nurses or doctors or therapists or counselors or ministers or whatever. They're in this because they have this deep need to be empathetic to people, and they feel what other people are feeling, not in a woo-woo way, but just because they're observant. They can see things and they process at that level. The last letter is S, and that stands for sensory acuity, or sensing the subtle in the environment. So they can pick up things that other people are missing. They don't have better, look at me, I wear glasses. I mean, they don't have better eyes or ears or better taste buds, but their filter is more open. It's like, think of an aperture on a camera. A camera opens up and more light comes in. That's the way highly sensitive people, we don't filter so much of the data that a lot of other people do. We take it in, and that also leads to that overstimulation, overwhelm as well. So we're picking up subtle things that many people miss. And if you combine that with the deep processing, you can see where highly sensitive people can be very creative. They can be very insightful and intuitive because they're picking up little small pieces of information that other people are passing by. And the thing about this is that it's kind of baked into nature for highly sensitive people to be here. I used to think of us sometimes as kind of the canary in the coal mine. We're people who see things other people are missing, not in a mystical way, but just because we pay more attention because we're wired that way. And so those four characteristics are kind of what highly sensitive people are about. And it isn't, like I said, it's not a disorder, it's not a dysfunction. And a lot of highly sensitive people don't even know they have the trait. So one of the things I like to do is get out there and try to share about this so that they can become aware of it. And if they become aware of it, they won't see themselves as being kind of freaks of nature like maybe people have told them they were because they were too sensitive or too emotional or whatever. So anyway, that's kind of the groundwork for what high sensitivity is.
I think I'm gonna go take that test.
Yeah, you should. You should. I'm surprised how many people, especially people I do podcasts with, who wind up going out and taking the test because they start to relate to some of the things that are on there. And one thing I would mention too is that high sensitivity is like a bell curve. It's a spectrum, right? It isn't just high sensitive people and the rest of the 80% of the population is not sensitive. Everybody has a degree of sensitivity about them, right? You couldn't survive if you didn't have that. That's taking in all this stuff, the sensory information, and making sense of it. But there are those who are on the lower side, probably those people that are more like risk takers, people who like pushing the envelope, getting out there and doing some things that might not seem altogether sometimes to be the best way to proceed. Then you've got highly sensitive people who are more cautious, more thoughtful, certainly concerned about what goes on with others. So if you think about it, it's a great way nature has balanced all that out. Of course, you got everybody else in the middle who can be more sensitive, less sensitive, whatever. But it's more about how you react to the world. That's really what it's about, more than it is about whether you're emotional or you're too sensitive to criticism or any of these other things that people tend to think of sensitivity is about.
Yeah, it made kind of, when I read what you your bio from in the thing, and I was like, okay, this is interesting to me because I know how I am, and I know some of my characteristics as far as energy and everything goes
Right.
with me, the amount of energy I absorb because
That's another thing too. That's a very important point. We do that. Highly sensitive people absorb other people's feelings, and that can also cause overwhelm.
yes,
Think about that. If you're in like a crowd of people and the vibe there is negative, it's bad, there's tension, whatever, you're picking up on that stuff and you're carrying it around with you, and that
yeah,
can be a burden at times if you don't have the ability. You have the capacity, but the ability to go out and release
release
that.
it
You know
exactly.
what I'm saying? So
And
that's exactly right.
for me, this is my release, is being able to talk on the mic and be able to have these conversations because I do absorb a lot of energy, and sometimes it's good energy,
Right.
and sometimes is negative energy. But when it's with someone that I'm having a great conversation with, the energy is just flowing back and forth. So you don't get so drained. So that's why when you, like you said, you had done a podcast prior to this and you had a good time on it, you came in with great energy, with great vibes, and
Absolutely.
great and so instead of someone feeling drained, it's the energy is able to transfer much more smoother between two people that, like you said, it's already, you've already absorbed some positive energy and some positive vibes. So now you're here to release it, and I'm here to receive it.
Well, I'm giving it to you. Yeah, this is it's funny when I start talking to highly sensitive people. I mean, people I have never met before. Typically, what happens was within about 4 or 5 minutes, we're in a thing. We got a rapport going on, right?
Yeah,
Immediate, almost as if you met somebody who was a part of your family or whatever, that you never met before, but yet you immediately know the way to talk to them. You know how to relate to them. You know how to communicate with them. And I've been very fortunate in a lot of the podcasts I've done. I've talked to people who, whether they're HSPs, which is what we call high sensitivity, highly sensitive people, or they're close to it. And you can immediately build that rapport. And that really makes for great conversation, but I think it makes for good podcast too.
And it does, honestly, it does. And when I speak to people, by the end of the conversation, they're like, "Yo, you're so easy to talk to. You're so," and so for me, it's just me being able to be myself and just speak how I feel and do what I love to do in podcasting. So with my guests, I just want them when they come on to just feel relaxed, just have a good time. Yes,
Yeah.
you're here to promote whatever you're here to promote, but at the same time, I want people to realize you're a regular person, just like them. You're
Yeah.
someone who, yes, you're a highly sensitive person, but you're still a regular person. People, it's people are quick to. For me, it's just I'm just me. I'm just being myself, and I don't like to label myself as anything. And that's because I'm open to everything.
Yeah. And that's a great way to be. And that's a real key thing is being who you are, being authentic, be true to yourself. And I think for a lot of highly sensitive people, and especially highly sensitive men, they're often not allowing themselves to be who they are because they're trying to be what society expects them to be as a man. And that's part of the message too, is as I was writing the books, that was the thing that kept coming out is, man, I am so much happier when I'm being myself and when I'm being true to who I am than if I'm trying to be somebody else. I'm trying to be something I'm not. And I know it sounds kind of cliche because you hear that all the time. Oh, be yourself, be yourself. But when you really do it like you're doing and like I'm doing right now, I mean, it's a different world. It's a much pleasanter place to be in. And I think you get better connections with people, and you get more out of yourself in the world.
No, I've built some amazing relationships since I've started this. I've built relationships with people that I probably would have never met prior to me
Exactly.
podcasting. And so when this when I finally decided to stop being afraid and press record and start my podcast, it just opened up so much within myself because it allowed me to be myself. And there's a stigmatism that men can't be sensitive, men can't cry, or men can't show emotions because they have to be strong, they have to be, and that's the thing, that's the problem. Like that's it makes it hard for us. We're fragile just like anyone else. Just because
Exactly.
we're men don't make us invulnerable. We hurt, we suffer, we need to let things out as well. And from forever it's been men don't cry.
Exactly. That's so true. Absolutely true. And the sad thing about this is because men are told not to look for help. They're not to seek out help and don't ever show any weakness. And then you got all these things that we attach so many negative things to being emotional. I'm not talking about falling down crying at every little thing. I'm talking about being able to show hurt when it hurts, to be able to show joy when you have joy, to be able to show love when you need to show love. That to me is more about being a human being. It's not so much about being a man or a woman for that matter. It's about being a human being because human beings all have that capacity to love and show emotion and feel emotions. And the sad thing about it is that what they're finding is that more and more men who are not allowed or don't allow themselves to show emotion, some of this comes out as aggression, right? And that aggressiveness can hurt family. It can hurt. Um, people you don't even know, people you work with, people that are neighbors, whatever. That aggression is all that emotion not allowed to express itself in a more positive way. And the other sad statistic is that you find now that more and more men, especially over the age of 50, but it's true across the board, um, are just taking their lives because they can't deal with that. And what we've told boys and young men is that you can't do these things that are natural for you to do. And by not being able to express those things, what happens is it builds up, and you get a point where there's a breaking point. It's like a teapot. The steam's got to go out somewhere, right? And so that's the thing about, I think, that highly sensitive men who will embrace the trait as it is and go out and do just like what you're doing, which is sharing with people about everyday experiences to make it relatable so people can say, this is not a bad thing. I mean, I can still be a man and I can cry. I mean, I can still be a man and ask for directions. I can still be a man and be vulnerable in many ways. You're not a robot, you're a human being. So this is a real important message I think we need to get out to people, especially men, that it's okay. It's all right. You don't lose anything by being a human being.
No, and you're right. It's okay, and it's okay. Like I am an advocate for men to, if you need help, therapy is fine. For many years, it was frowned upon if you went and sought professional help. Like, oh no,
Right.
you're crazy. This is, you got problems. You can't know.
Right.
And me, I know personally because I know what I've experienced in my lifetime, being widowed at 31, being very self-destructive, and doing the things that I did to myself, and finally going to seek the help that I needed. I'm a big advocate for it. You need help. You can't go at this. You can't go at this alone.
Exactly.
It's not easy task. It's not easy task. And if you think you can deal with this by yourself, you're mistaken. It's okay to be able to open up to people and let someone help you.
Absolutely. And just because you're a man doesn't mean you're a self-contained unit that you can stand by yourself and you're an island. You don't need any help from anybody. And I think a lot of men, you look at what's in like popular culture, movies, and sometimes music and literature and everything else. We've got this sort of ideal man that is a hero and stands by themselves. They solve all their problems. They never really need anybody else, and that became an ideal for all of us. Is this idea that we don't need anybody else. We can do everything on our own. And that's, as you said, we all go through emotional issues throughout our lives, and if we don't reach out for help to get that resolved, um, it's not going to lead to a good place. Let me put it that way. And I think, you've known people like that. I've known people like that. I've had times in my life where I've had to go get help too because I was heading in the wrong direction. That's one of the things we need to share with our young men, particularly, so that they understand you don't have to be completely invulnerable. You're not Superman. You're a human being, and you're going to need help from time to time. And to be able to show that and express that.
No, yeah. And that's why, like you said, this is why I do this, is to be able to share that message, and to be able to spread this kind of content out to the people. Because again, like when I started my podcast, I was, it was more me doing, speaking by myself and speaking on the news and whatever was going on at that time. And I enjoyed podcasting. I just didn't enjoy the content.
Right.
And when I switched it to more a conversation piece with having guests on, speaking on positive things and stuff like that, and whatever they had going on, it really changed how I really felt about podcasting. It made me fall in love with it because I was spreading something that was good. I was doing something that was a positive message. And when I started realizing that, and things started falling into place, the guests that I would attract, the people that would want to be on the show, it went from people ghosting me, not appearing on my show,
Uh-huh.
or asking, like, one of the first questions asking is, "Well, how many listeners or downloads do you have?" Or and me being starting out, of course, you don't have the numbers that they want to hear, and so a lot of people said no. But I didn't let that deter me. I continued to do what I was doing, and eventually, I networked with people and started joining groups and signing up for guest guest services and stuff like that. And it just started growing slowly but surely, growing and growing. And then people started reaching out to me, sending me messages like, "Hey, I saw your podcast. I listened to a couple episodes," and they would go into details about the episodes.
Right.
And so that showed me, like, okay, fine. And it for me, it was like, wow, people are actually now reaching out to me. I remember when they would ignore me. And so just being able to do this, like I said, it's just allowed me to open up and allow myself to be transparent so people can see this is who I am. I'm not trying to
Right.
fake what I'm doing. These are the things that happen in my life. This is how I've dealt with them, and this is how I'm dealing with everything. It's just,
Right.
you have your ups and downs. Every day, I'm not gonna act like every day is perfect.
Right.
Life is hard. Life, you experience, but it's lessons learned, lessons being learned, and it's how you receive them.
Yeah. And that's what you're doing is you deconstructed something that wasn't you, and you're constructing something that is you, and is more like it's really a shift in energy too. The way you were describing it to me, it's sort of like a light switch went on. You said, "Oh, this is where I'm supposed to be." And sometimes it is a slog. You have to go just brick by brick, put it together until it becomes what it is. But I can almost guarantee you that if you're being yourself and whatever it is you do, you will succeed at whatever level you want to succeed at. And I think that because people notice honesty and integrity and authenticity, um, and they're attracted to it because we don't have that. You were saying the news is bad. Everybody knows that a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is lies. It's just not true, or it's negative, and the energy's no good. And people really are craving positive energy. They're positive news. That's what they're looking for. So that's what you're doing, which is great. And I applaud you for that.
Yeah, and you're right. It's like everything is just negative, negative, and then you have just people profiting off of this negativity, and
Yeah.
it just sometimes it just boggles the mind. Like, is this what really people want to watch? Is this what they really? And it makes you question it. But then you receive those messages from people that, hey, I needed to hear this episode, and then that reaffirms you. That gets you
Right.
right back on your path where you're like, all right, I reached one person, so let me reach another person, and then another person, and it'll just keep growing and growing. And like I said, it's just about me out just producing the best content that I can, and
Right.
hopefully people are ready to receive the messages.
Well, you know what? I think you got to go take that test, because you definitely sound like somebody who carries the traits of a highly sensitive person, which is, you know, very often, like I said, we've got such a negative idea about what sensitivity is, especially with men. But the reality is, it really is about caring about people, caring about how you interface with people,
Mhm.
making sure you're delivering a good, positive message to people to edify them and not tear them down. That's the kind of stuff and sharing and wanting to help people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what highly sensitive people are kind of about. A lot of them are confused because they don't really understand the trait, because nobody's ever explained it to them before, because it makes perfect sense when you understand it. When you don't understand it, you really kind of like a leaf on a lake. You're just floating around. Whatever people tell you, that's what you're going to become. But the reality is we need highly sensitive people, and especially highly sensitive men. Not that there's any better or worse than highly sensitive women, but highly sensitive men, because there is I feel such a pain in men right now. There's this laboring, carrying this weight that they can't fulfill. And nobody's telling them it's okay to let that stuff go. You can become who you are. You can be what you want to be. And you can be vulnerable sometimes, because you're going to be, no matter whether you like it or not, or whether you believe it or not, it's going to happen. So, you got to go take the test. I really do think that you might surprise yourself. But it's you're showing all the qualities of that. And I imagine there's a good many of your listeners who are as well, who maybe for the first time they're hearing about this, but they identify with it because they know, well, you know what, I've been like that all my life, and I didn't know how to describe it. I didn't know what it was about. And when they find out that there's other people like them, and that there's a purpose to it, it's not just random, then I think it makes them feel good. And I think, they can get closer to getting to their authentic nature and being who they really want to be.
Definitely. But William, has been great. Now is the time where you plug away, let everybody know where they can find you, what's your website, everything.
Okay. Yeah, it's easy. You can find me and links to everything that I've been talking about and all that stuff at thesensitiveman.com. It's one word, thesensitiveman.com. And I got a blog out there and links to the books and everything else. I would appreciate if people stop by. And let me just say this. There's a contact form. If you contact me, I will respond to anything everybody sends in questions or whatever. And very often I reach out and talk to people directly too, because sometimes I find that that's all it takes is just a conversation with somebody to help them, understand a little bit more about the trait.
Yeah, that definitely, and I commend you on doing that. It's some people probably would think, oh, I'm not gonna reach out because he's not gonna contact me or whatever. And it's a good thing when you do reach out to people who take the time to reach out to you, and like you said, you might be able to help them.
Absolutely, and love to talk to them. So that please don't hesitate.
And that's what sometimes it is. All they need is someone to talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can't, like, sometimes they're afraid to go to friends and family because they don't want to be judged. And to be able to speak to someone who doesn't really know them, and them be able to express themselves,
sure,
and be able to not feel judged, that's something that's great. That's like, I wish more people would do that. I wish more people would be like, hey, if you need someone to talk to, and it's a great thing that you're doing.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate what you're doing too. This is important work, sharing positive energy and sharing other people's stories. That's a great thing to do.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But now it's time for you to say bye, but don't leave just yet. We're gonna chat a little bit offline.
Okay.
And but now it's time for shout outs. Big shout out to my Real Wise fan, Bobby J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady, Fina. Love you, baby. Big shout out to Mr. William Allen for coming through and showing the podcast world some love. Great energy. He's a great guest. So any of my fellow podcasters out there listening, I'm gonna have his contact information in the descriptions, and definitely hit him up if y'all want him on y'all show. And then a big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at wise_b_blunt, Instagram at wise_b_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.